Hi, everyone. I was actually supposed to be here yesterday, but I was the victim of a supply chain attack from the airline industry. My planes were delayed constantly, but I'm here now, which is great. Before I start, I'd love if we could all just give a big round of applause. You don't see it, but there's a bunch of people behind this screen working tirelessly to make today awesome. So if we could just do a really big round of applause for all of them. So I already had a great intro, so I won't spend any time on this slide, but this slide, though, I like to spend time on. I haven't done this in 2 years, but I always kind of just have this slide. I look at this cat. I do this for a while. I wait for people to laugh. That gives me a sign that it's going to be a good audience. This talk actually has a lot less jokes than usual. But let's dive right into it. NPM is a critical tool in the open source supply chain. Just a show of hands, how many people use NPM at least once a week? That's a few of you. And there's various threats to the open source supply chain that we deal with, NPM being a key part of this where we're seeing attacks happen. And one of these kinds of attacks that I want to talk about are account takeovers, or as I'll call it from now on, ATOs. And in particular, we've seen a series of attacks against high-impact packages and using those high-impact packages to publish malware. This is a timeline. This is one of those slides you'll probably want to take a photo of, put on Twitter or something like that. But in October of last year, UA parser.js was hijacked. One of the author's accounts was taken over. They injected malware into the package. They used a post-install script to deploy that malware to our customers. That package is deployed has about 1,200 dependents, is downloaded about 7.5 million times a week. And it took us about 9 hours to take it down. A couple weeks later, the package Koa was hijacked. Pretty much the exact same story. This time, less dependents, only 166 dependents, because it's a little deeper in the tree, but over 9 million weekly downloads. Thankfully, we had a response time of 30 minutes. And I'll talk a little bit in a second about how we were able to go faster. And later that same day, only 90 minutes later, the package RC was also hijacked. This one has 13 million weekly downloads. We had it off the registry within 15 minutes. And so there's a couple things that in these scenarios we did right. For the NPM registry, we have malware scanning in place. Every single package that is published to the registry is scanned for malware, and we have systems in place to notify us when malware is identified. This service was fairly new at the time that the 3 previous incidents that I was mentioning happened. But we were able to really quickly iterate on that. There's a lot of noise in these systems, as you can imagine. People publish things that look like malware but aren't malware. There's tons of packages that are published all the time that are extremely low impact. Net new packages where all the downloads are essentially bots that are cloning the registry. When we have so much noise coming through, it's hard to get these signals. And this helped us come up with this concept of a high-impact package, which is a package with more than 1 million weekly downloads or more than 500 dependents. And we introduced, between the first incident and the second incident, a couple systems in place to notify our on-call staff whenever high-impact packages have malware that are associated. We have really clear policies. A lot of you work on open source, so you're probably super aware of when things happen and you need to make a decision. If you don't have a clear policy, you can't act quickly. We had extremely clear policies, which made it really easy for us to just take that malware down and not have to mince words about it. We have automated tooling to do all of that, and support agents who are empowered to do it, and our product teams and engineering teams also have the ability to do it, so we use chat ops for a lot of this. So taking down a malware package is a single command in a chat room that's audited and maintained. You have to do it in that chat room. You can't just do it in any chat room, but it made it so we could act really quickly. And we had all hands on deck. When you need to make decisions quickly about important things and figuring out how to manage it, you need support, engineering, product, security, our trust and safety teams, our incident response teams, our comms teams. All of them are together. We're all in sync, and that's how we were able to take a 9-hour response time and make it a 15-minute response time in about 2 weeks. And we learned a couple things, right? Account takeovers are a pattern. This isn't going to change. These are happening a lot, and we need to do something about them. That time to response is critical. Every minute that those things are on the registry is a minute that someone is potentially downloading it and having their system compromised. And we need to be acting as quickly as we can. We did some analysis and found that strong two-factor authentication may have stopped this. If we're thinking about what are known as password stuffing attacks, people have databases of usernames and passwords, and they just try them all and see if one of them hits. Two-factor authentication and other similar authentication protections make it much harder. They raise the bar. We'll never completely protect against these things, but it makes it much more difficult. And finally, the biggest thing we learned is we need to stop this. It's not an option. We're stewards of the registry, maintaining this extremely important part of the software supply chain. You saw how many hands were up in this room. It's the most important thing that we can do, not just as employees of the companies that pay us, but as stewards and members of this community. No one else can do it. It's extremely important. And so we came up with this goal, no more account takeovers. Nothing like setting a goal you can never accomplish, but we'll do our best. And we came up with something that we called the NPM Security Roadmap. We worked on login verification so that non-2FA protected accounts would require OTP via email. To be very clear, this is not 2FA, not to the standard, nor to what we call 2FA, but it makes it significantly harder to take over accounts that don't have 2FA. We are in the process of introducing and implementing mandatory 2FA for our highest impact accounts. But you can't just enforce 2FA without making the experience great. So we heavily invested and made our entire roadmap about improving the 2FA experience and improving account recovery. Because the more 2FA you have enforced, the more people are going to lose their second factors, the more people who are going to need to recover their accounts. There's a real human cost to this too. Every single account recovery is susceptible to social engineering. You can put everything at the beginning and make it really hard to log into an account, but if it's extremely easy to recover that account, if you could just press a button and get an email and take the account over, the 2FA is not useful at all. So we're also in the process of heavily investing in improving our account recovery process. I mentioned login verification. This is what it looks like. You go to log into an account now that doesn't have 2FA enabled. You get emailed an OTP. You need to put that OTP in there. For those of you who work on accounts at all, this is a great way to make sure that everyone has a verified email address, little life hack. But every single account on NPM now requires this. We rolled it out over time, like many of these initiatives, to ensure that we're not locking people out of their accounts and we're minimizing the churn to our ecosystem. We had December 7th, we started rolling it out to our publishers. So these were the accounts that are actually susceptible to account takeover and have it be, a problem. Between December 7th and January 4th, we slowly rolled it out to all of our publishers. We particularly waited until the new year to roll it out to publishers that we thought were at risk of being locked out of their accounts, because I thought it'd be kind of sucky to do that to folks over the holidays. And by March 1st, we had rolled this program out to every single account on the registry. We didn't initially start with that being the goal. At GitHub, we have an expression called ship to learn. So we shipped this out to our most vulnerable accounts first and slowly rolled it out to more people as we monitored the support tickets that were coming in, monitored for bugs and problems, and when we saw that, hey, this isn't really causing a massive issue for our customers, we decided to roll it out to everyone. And to be very clear, this didn't make everyone happy. And you can't make everyone happy. But sometimes you have to do things that make people unhappy to protect the greater whole. 2FA enforcement, talking about doing things that make people unhappy to protect the greater whole. We needed to do it in a way that didn't disrupt our important maintainers. So saying, hey, we enforce 2FA, that's a really bold statement. And a lot of the subtlety comes out of the details of what it means to implement that. So our process, we started by thinking about why are we doing this? We had a focus on account takeovers. So we worked on only enforcing 2FA for creating new sessions. But we made it so the defaults are when you turn on 2FA, it's enforced for both creating new sessions and publishing packages. But folks can opt out of that. And one of the things that's most important about that is it means that existing access tokens and automations that are in place by our customers were not broken by this enforcement. We did a phased rollout, which I'll show in a second. We didn't do it to everyone all at once. We started with the maintainers of our top 100 packages. We expanded to the maintainers of the top 500 packages. And before the end of the year, we'll roll it out to all of the maintainers of high impact packages. And those groups, I won't share the exact numbers, but there was a bit of like kind of an order of magnitude between each one of those groups, which allowed us to do a phased rollout, gather customer feedback, and understand, is this working? Are there changes that we need to make? And finally was this concept of maintainer first, which is closely aligned with a GitHub ideology we have of being customer obsessed. We needed to make sure that what we were doing was protecting folks, but also that it wasn't heavily disrupting them. As I mentioned, we didn't invalidate existing access tokens. We have this thing we called limbo. So if an account gets put into 2FA enforcement, but they haven't enabled 2FA yet, we actually don't block that account from publishing. Because again, we're focused on ATOs. What we do is we put them in limbo. They basically can't do anything but publish a package. They can't mint no tokens, they can't change their password, they can't change their email address, they can't add maintainers to packages. Anything aside from essentially publishing a package is blocked for that account until they implement 2FA. And you'll see in a second what that looks like from the implementation. But on February 1st, we implemented this for the top 100 maintainers. Just a couple, I guess a week and a half ago, or a week ago, we implemented this for the top 500 maintainers. And before the end of the year, we plan to do this for all high impact. And I'm sure that you're wondering, what does adoption look like? Well, about 90% of the top 100 maintainers currently have 2FA enabled today. 82% of the top 500, and in fact, I think that number is actually 83 as of yesterday, but our weekly stats didn't line up with when I needed to put these slides in, and about 70% of the high impact maintainers. And as I was saying, we can make these numbers better. A lot of folks, including executives at the company, when they saw this slide, were like, well, why 90%, not 100? And it's like, well, we're trying to protect against ATOs here. We're trying to protect against the vulnerability of the account minting new sessions. That's protected. We may do another phase in the future of tightening these restrictions. We may enforce it for publish. We may say, hey, you can't even publish anymore without 2FA, and we'll see those numbers go up. But again, this is a phased rollout. We're trying to minimize the disruption to our customers. And I think that the numbers speak to themselves. This is far better than it could be, although obviously we can always do better. So I talked about an improved 2FA experience. It's really important for us to make the second factor delightful. We can't go and tell people, hey, turn this thing on and make the experience not great. Before we invested in this, 2FA on NPM was a single second factor, which was mobile authenticator apps only. So we went and implemented WebAuthn. WebAuthn is an industry standard. It allows you to introduce support for a large number of different second factors, including biometrics, face scanning, push to phone. Whatever the browser implements as a second factor within WebAuthn, we support now. And we also improved the overall 2FA management experience. So we have a whole new landing page just for managing your second factors. You can't just have a single second factor anymore. You can add many, and this helps against that account lockout problem. So you can manage multiple keys. You can replace your authenticator app without turning off 2FA, which sounds like something you probably would want to do, but that's historically how it used to work. You can view and regenerate recovery codes, and we got rid of this concept of modes. You used to, when you enabled 2FA, pick between auth or auth and publish. We do, as we call it, snap to safe defaults. It's now immediately enabled for everything, but we have a little thing hidden in menus in case you need to turn it off. We introduced some new experiences also for managing 2FA for organizations. So specifically, we allow organizations to now enforce 2FA, which allows individual organizations to roll out these restrictions to their own users at a different timeline than we're planning to. And we also made it much easier to audit the second factors of the members of your organization. To be clear, whether or not an account has 2FA enabled is not something we're making publicly available. That can make accounts like targets. We don't want to make it really obvious for folks about which accounts aren't well protected. But if you're giving access to folks through an organization, we believe that you deserve to know that information of what the risk and make decisions based on your risk tolerance. So improved account recovery was the next thing. As I mentioned, the more people who adopt 2FA, the more people who are going to lose those second factors, the more people who are going to have to recover their accounts. And account recovery tickets for us is already one of the most intensive forms of tickets that our support agents need to go through. Every single account recovery ticket could potentially be someone trying to socially engineer those teams to take over accounts that way. So we are working on process improvements. We've already implemented new playbooks that have been reviewed by various account security experts, consistent processes that we apply every time. We've got identity verification that we're working on, and I'll show a quick demo in a second, and automation to make this whole process not require as much human intervention. So here's the demo. This is something that okay, there we go. This is what we want account recovery to look like and what we're working towards. You would log into your account. You would click to recover your account. You'd get a code over email. This is verifying your email address. Knowing that we know that an account owns that email address is the first step. People can then say what they're looking to recover. You get a text message. Very clear, this is not 2FA. It would not be a second factor. It's only for identity verification and part of a multi-phased process for identity verification. We're looking at linking directly to, well, we're working on linking directly to GitHub and Twitter through an OAuth application. So you'd be able to go in, authenticate with both your GitHub and Twitter, and submit a ticket. At this point, the support agent already has, for this ticket, 3 different ways that you've verified your identity programmatically and can then use that information to execute the rest of the account recovery. So last thing I wanted to talk about really quickly was a recent campaign that we dealt with using stolen OAuth tokens. What happened was that OAuth tokens were stolen from Travis CI and Heroku. Those tokens were used to authenticate with GitHub and download private repositories, including the private repositories of NPM. Those private repositories were scanned and secrets were found. Those secrets included an AWS access key, which was then used to gain access to our AWS infrastructure. Within AWS, a couple things were then exfiltrated. One was a backup of SkimDB. It was from April 7th, 2021. It included a bunch of different data that I'll talk about in a second. A CSV inventory of all of the packages on the registry was also exfiltrated, as well as the private packages from 2 organizations. Thankfully, based on log and event analysis and using package verification, we're confident that no packages were modified or no new versions were published. But there was account information that was taken, and we've notified everyone. We've tried to be extremely transparent about this entire incident. We notified everyone who may have had their passwords leaked. We notified everyone who may have had the metadata from their packages leaked, and we notified everyone who the names and versions of their packages were leaked. But this is the thing that I thought was pretty cool. We were able to validate the registry itself using package signatures. So every package, when it's published to the registry, is signed by NPM at the time of publish. Previously, this was done with a PGP signature, and we're in the process right now, prior to this event, of actually re-signing every single package on the entire registry using a new key using the ECDSA algorithm. So we already had all of this infrastructure in place that we were then able to use to scan the entire registry and revalidate every single package. And as of today, well, I mean, earlier than today, we've gone through and re-signed every single package on the registry and validated the SHA-SUMs and that those assets were not modified. We are in the process of implementing a new CLI command that will come out in the coming weeks that you'll be able to use to locally verify all of these signatures and ensure that the integrity of your local packages as well. So you may ask, what's next for us at NPM? And there's kind of like 3 major things without getting into the specifics. We obviously need to focus on core internal security improvements. That's a huge, obvious thing that we need to be investing in quite a bit. We're also continuing to invest heavily in customer-facing security features. All of that work that I was showing you around account recovery is all in process right now, and we're still iterating on other places, especially around tokens and improving the ability to securely publish. But we can't stop there. We need to continue to think about innovating. And this is one of the biggest challenges that we have at NPM today. If we spend all of our time just working on any one of these three things, it's not going to be great. But if we spend all of our time securing the registry today and don't think about the way that people want to consume JavaScript in 5 years, then we might be securing something that people don't care about using. So this is the thing that we're trying to really find the balance on between securing the registry today and building a product that will continue to be useful for folks forever, hopefully. And with that in mind, if you see me around, if you have ideas, if you have questions, please come and grab me and ask. And thank you very much for your time today.